You walk through the heavy doors of a luxury boutique. You have $15,000 of liquid cash in your pocket, ready to exchange it for a highly coveted physical asset, the Birkin bag. You approach the sales associate, state your intention, and are met with a polite but firm response. There is zero inventory. You are suddenly thrust into a jarring reality. For perhaps the first time, you are discovering that having the requisite capital does not automatically grant you access to the world's most exclusive assets. Are you making the critical, expensive mistake of thinking Hermès is just a retail store? If you are treating this establishment like a high-end supermarket where cash dictates the rules, I must bluntly tell you that you are playing the wrong game entirely. The retail public, driven by pedestrian consumer habits, treats Hermès like a shop, but the ultra-wealthy, the elite minority who actually hold these assets, understand it for what it truly is. It is a highly regulated financial institution operating as a closed-loop ecosystem with its own stringent underwriting standards. Today, we are going to tear down the facade and expose the hidden Hermès game, the exact framework of psychological and financial leverage you must master to unlock what insiders call a quota bag. The root of your frustration lies in a fundamental flaw in average human consumer behavior. We are conditioned to believe in a simple transactional logic. I have the listed price, therefore I am entitled to buy the good. This default instinct is exactly why so many self-proclaimed VIPs fail spectacularly here. In the broader economy, liquidity is king, but in the Hermès ecosystem, pure cash worshippers are systematically rejected. Treating this brand like a simple transaction guarantees your failure, because you are trying to use fiat currency in a market trading exclusively on historical loyalty and systemic compliance. They do not just want your $15,000. They want to know if you are fundamentally worthy of holding their equity. Let me break down the exact profiles of the losers in this economic microclimate. I have watched countless millionaires walk into these boutiques and humiliate themselves because they fall into one of three distinct categories of failure. First, there is the entitled walk-in. This is the amateur who believes a black Centurion card acts as a universal skeleton key. They stride in, demand a Birkin, and are immediately classified by the store's invisible algorithm as a liability. Second, we have the one-time whale. This is the brute force buyer who tries to bribe the system, throwing $50,000 at watches and scarves in a single afternoon, expecting a quota bag to materialize as a reward. They fundamentally misunderstand that Hermès does not need a sudden influx of cash. They demand an annuity. Finally, there is the impatient flipper. These are the speculators who vibrate with anxiety, demanding an immediate return on investment. The brand's vetting process is specifically designed to sniff out and permanently blacklist these individuals from the VIP leather room. When these people are politely turned away, they are usually fed a comforting lie. They are told they can be placed on a waitlist. If you are sitting at home right now, believing that your name on a boutique's iPad means you are actually queuing up for a bag, you are falling into a brilliantly engineered psychological trap. There is no chronological line. The waitlist is a ghost, an illusion of fairness manufactured to manage the emotions of the retail public. It weaponizes your hope and your frustration, keeping you tethered to the brand. You end up buying belts, perfumes, and entry-level shoes, essentially paying a perpetual tax while never actually moving an inch closer to the core asset. You are funding the ecosystem while being entirely locked out of its capital gains. To break out of this purgatory, you must completely reverse your operational logic. You do not simply buy a Birkin. You earn it as a dividend after meticulously building a diversified portfolio. This brings us to the counterpuncher reality of the pre-spend ratio. In the unspoken, highly regulated ledger of the Hermès economy, you are required to allocate capital into other categories before you are even considered eligible for an allocation. Historically, this ratio demands a 1-to-1, or in highly competitive markets, a 3-to-1 expenditure. You must spend $30,000 to $45,000 on silks, ready-to-wear, and home goods just to secure the privilege of spending another $15,000 on the bag itself. This is not a purchase. It is a calculated capital deployment strategy designed to prove your systemic loyalty. To execute this strategy, you must establish the foundational rule of this ecosystem. Stop looking at the person behind the glass counter as a retail worker. In this game, they are your investment broker. If you treat them like a glorified cashier, you are bankrupting your chances. You are not just buying products. You are building vital emotional equity with a gatekeeper. I have seen successful executives fail miserably here because they try to pull rank. Your broker must eventually walk into the back office and passionately advocate on your behalf to the store director, who acts as the ultimate underwriter of this asset. If your broker does not believe in your long-term value, your file goes straight into the trash. This brings us to the second absolute law, which is the diversification of your quota. This is your mandatory sacrifice. You cannot simply demand the highest yielding asset. You must deliberately allocate capital into their non-hero categories. You have to buy the porcelain plates, the hoods, the ready-to-wear cashmere, and the fine jewelry. Ordinary people feel physical pain doing this, viewing it as retail extortion. But you must understand this is the required tax to prove you are a true stakeholder and not a desperate flipper looking for a quick score. You are demonstrating that your capital is patient. You are showing them you are not here to loot their vault, but to invest deeply in their entire corporate ecosystem. Why would any rational person subject themselves to this agonizing process? The answer lies in the cold, hard empirical data. Let us look at the numbers over a 40-year macroeconomic cycle. The Hermès Birkin has historically outpaced the annualized returns of both physical gold and the S&P 500. We are talking about a physical asset with effectively zero historical volatility. When the stock market collapses and gold violently fluctuates on interest rate panic, this bag remains entirely immune. But the real reason the smartest money plays this game is the immediate secondary market liquidity. The exact second you carry that orange box out of the boutique, your asset marks to market at a 100 to 200% premium. You are capturing a massive arbitrage simply because you had the stoic discipline to navigate their systemic barriers. To understand why this massive arbitrage exists, you must examine the economics of what Thorstein Veblen defined as a Veblen good. We are talking about an asset class where demand actually explodes upward as the price rises and access evaporates. Look back at the historical genesis of this phenomenon. When Jane Birkin sat next to Hermès chief executive Jean-Louis Dumas on that fateful flight in 1983, they did not just sketch a carry-all on an airplane's sickness bag. They unwittingly engineered the ultimate masterclass in artificial scarcity. Hermès deliberately keeps their production ecosystem painfully decentralized. They relied exclusively on individual artisans working for dozens of hours, outright refusing to industrialize the process. The supply curve is mathematically engineered to never intersect with the demand curve. This brings us to a profound paradigm shift that most newly wealthy individuals fail to grasp. At the absolute highest echelons of capital, true luxury is no longer defined by a staggering price tag. It is defined by the absolute denial of access. The Birkin is not merely a stitched leather good. It is a physical abstraction of power dynamics. When you are forced to endure the weight, too quietly by the porcelain, too politely smile at the broker who holds your financial fate in their hands, you are being ruthlessly tested. Wealth at this elite level requires the psychological endurance to play invisible long-term games. The people who win do not throw tantrums demanding instant gratification. They understand that navigating this exclusionary labyrinth is the precise mechanism that protects their asset from market depreciation. Finally, we arrive at the ultimate actionable imperative. If you're going to step into this arena, you must immediately stop acting like an entitled retail consumer. You must operate with the cold calculation of an institutional investor deploying capital. If you realize you lack the stomach for this multi-year psychological warfare, there is a simple alternative. You go directly to the secondary market, swallow the 200% markup, and buy your time back. But whatever you do, never complain about paying that premium. You are simply compensating the people who possess the stoic discipline that you lacked. Where do you think the smart money is moving next as these restricted economies grow tighter? Hit subscribe and comment below if you have ever tried to play the Hermès game, and join the elite who understand the